Hey, and what is up, everybody? Welcome to Where All the Ladies At, and I hopefully by now you're accustomed to seeing this mug. I changed some stuff up. I don't know. I'm trying to figure some image stuff out. This is a podcast where I take a deep dive into history and try to figure out where the fuck all the women went, because for being half of the population, only a handful of us made it into the books, and that is sad. Let me straighten my hair. Feeling so narcissistic today. Anyway, I'm Kim, your host. Maybe a narcissist, who knows, but definitely a history nerd, and definitely a lover of cats. If you see me looking down here right now, that's because my kitty is laying right next here. She is ready to learn about these women too. And that is cool because guess what? She is a kitty from the streets of Georgia, the country, not the state. And so she might enjoy some of these stories. It may be part of her family's legacy and history. Anyways, I don't know. I'm sometimes I say crazy things, and that's what you got to get used to. I also cuss a little bit, guys. So if you're not down for that, probably not a place for you. I also stand on soapboxes occasionally because I'm a feminist. I am a liberal, and I am a person who thinks humans deserve certain respect. And so sometimes I get on those soapboxes. So once again, if that's something that bothers you, that's cool. You don't have to hang around. Also, if you don't want to look at my mug, you can always listen to me on Spotify as opposed to staring at this face for about 30-40 minutes. Your choice. I am also a freelance writer as well as a novelist, and like I said, all around history nerd, just basically all around a nerd. I'm just being real, but I do have a primary focus and interest in history. So, that being said, if you're new here, make sure you go back and check out all the podcasts and the video podcasts I have previously done to check out some of those badass women. And today we're talking about a pretty awesome lady. I happen to be a writer, right? So sometimes a lot of the people I cover, some of them have writing possibilities, right? So today, by the way, this month we're covering women of Slavic history, and that includes Russia. And so today's topic is Anna Akhmatova. I hope Akhmatova. Yes, Akhmatova. I think I'm pronouncing that right. She is a poetess and one of Russia's greatest. I can't stress enough that you should go check out her stuff. But before we jump into this amazing woman and Russia and what it was like during her lifetime there, we're going to do a little house cleaning. So if you want to reach out to me, you have any suggestions, there's ways to do that in the description box. There's also ways to support the podcast. At the very least, I would appreciate it if you would like, follow, share, comment, all those good stuff. Please and thank you. The links in the description box are more for people who choose to kick a little cash my way. Always appreciated. Also there are links to the Medium publication that goes with this podcast. There I do more in-depth articles and articles on other things as well. There's also a link to my other podcast. Yes, that's right. You heard it. I have two. And I'm considering doing a third. Am I crazy? No, I am crazy. There's no maybe about it. But my other podcast that I have currently going is called Our Mystic Road Trip, and it is basically a podcast that's a spiritual, mystical, magical podcast. It covers everything from crystals to herbs to all that kind of good stuff. Some people might call it woo-woo, so if you're into the woo-woo, please hop on over there, check it out too. Lots of cool stuff. Lots of cool stuff. That sounds a little narcissistic too. Maybe I am. No, it's pretty cool. Like, it's damn cool. All right. And that is it for the housekeeping, I think. Yeah, I think that's it. So let's jump in, shall we? So, Anna Akhmatova. She is one of the best Russian poets there is, in my opinion. I have read several of her stuff and I really like it. Not that I've read a lot of Russian poetry. Let me just be real with you here. But of the stuff I've read, I like her a lot. So, she was present in 20th century Russia. But so before we jump into her story, let's really look at what was going on in Russia in the early 20th century, and also what it was like for women at the time. Get ready to be angry or sad. I'm not sure. Either way it goes. So, Russia, early 1900s, right? It is full of drama and chaos, and no one is really winning. Tsar Nicholas II is still in charge, but it's not going well for him, right? He's trying to hold on to a job, but he's not doing the job of the way the people feel it should be done now, right? Everyone's whispering behind his back. Oh, by the way, guys, I didn't pause for a second. If I'm looking down, it's because my script and my notes are down here. And I'm not going to edit this. This is the way it is. I'm too old to try to remember all this stuff. Just realistic with you. Right? So, jumping back into it, right? Tsar Nicholas, not doing a great job. People are pissed. There's drama. There's chaos. There's people talking behind his back. Everybody is out for something new, right? There's a collective tension in Russia at this time. And this is as the Russian Revolution is starting to brew, right? And then it kicks off, right? But it's going to get messier. It's going to get messier. So Russia's got wars. It's got poverty. Lots of people are just fed up. The working class are pretty tired of getting the short end of the stick too, as well they should be, right? So the aristocracy, which was still very prominent at the time, still trying to hold on to the old ways, right? It's somebody who doesn't want to like upgrade their phone because they know their phone so well and it works for them. But if it doesn't work for everybody, then it's time to upgrade your phone, right? And that's a very cheesy way of saying it, but that's the way it was, right? So there's the world is changing. All the world is changing, and the Russian Empire is starting to fall apart. It's one of the last empires left, and it's just starting to fall apart, right? So it basically people are saying it's time to get the monarchy out. It's time to get rid of them. But it gets very interesting, right? There's also a cultural explosion at this time, right? It's not just a bunch of angry peasants and bad leadership. It's not just like that. There is a cultural explosion and revolution happening too. It's a golden age of Russian art and literature and poetry, right? And it's mixed with rebellious poets and painters and musicians, and they're all tossing out all these ideas, right? And they're getting rid of the old ones. Like they're like, that's last season. Now let's jump into something new. Okay. So it's, and that's when Anna Akhmatova comes in, right? She's not going to sit on the sidelines. She's soaking up all this chaos, right? This is her youth, right? Like a sponge. And she's starting to write down thoughts and ideas. And these thoughts and ideas are going to change things. So it's important to understand though that this wasn't just a little teeny avant-garde movement, right, for the cool kids in Moscow. It's not. It was a political and cultural shift. We're starting to affect every corner of Russian society. Every corner. The intellectuals, the artists, even everyday folk are trying to grapple with what's happening in their world, right? The old is starting to be ushered out, and the new is starting to come in. There's like an air of anticipation, right? You know, and so it starts happening, right? So this is when the revolution starts. The aristocracy gets removed. I'm going to say removed. Sometimes in not a great way for them. And in general, like, Russia begins to change. It starts to switch from being aristocratic. Oof. I do speak English, I swear. To the communist world that would inhabit it for most of the 20th and most of the 20th century. So now you kind of have a setting, right? There's chaos, there's change happening. What was it like for women? Well, you know, it wasn't great. Women weren't just sitting around, right? They were doing a whole bunch of stuff, right? They were the backbone of the country, as I say many times. You know, so early 20th century for women in Russia. It wasn't glamorous, like I said. It wasn't glamorous anywhere. And Russia, you know, well, women were still kind of living in the... I'm going to move. Hold on, guys. I know this is going to annoy you guys, but I'm going to move this. Oh, sorry about getting so close to you guys. All right, this works out. This works out better. This feels like I'm talking more to you, not at you. I would never talk at you. Well, we'll see. When I get hot on some topics, I might talk at and not with. Ooh, yikes. All right, so women in Russia were still kind of living the old way, right? They weren't encouraged to be heard. You know, it was, they were talking, it was just society was not, women were expected to stay quiet. Let's just put it that way. I was trying to find a PC way to say it, and there's no PC way to say it. They were said, shut up, be pretty, and do all the housework and take care of the kids, right? The only thing women could really write back then was the shopping list. But that's not true, because there were some women that came out of this, right? When men were out doing the revolutionizing thing and starting wars, as they do, you know. Women were like at home, they were housewives, but they didn't want just to be that. And you know, that's where the world that Anna Akhmatova was in, you know. She was saying like, here, hold my damn vodka. Yeah, I got stuff to do. And I'm going to go do it. You know, women, this was a woman, and there were many of women like Anna that weren't going to just sit around and let some like old school traditions define them, you know? So she picked up a pen and she put her voice to paper. And that is absolutely awesome. So, because when she spoke, they listened, you know? So let's talk a little bit about, about Anna. So Anna wasn't writing to get attention. She was reflecting on this world that was crumbling around her. She witnessed brutality of the Tsarist regime, the violent changes brought by the revolution, and a bloody aftermath of the Civil War. This was survival. Everything she wrote about was things that, you know, in her poems, you feel the sting of loss. You feel heartbreak. You feel like this suffocating pressure of living in a world where nothing was certain, right? But her voice was a voice, and one of several, of defiance. You know, she demanded to be heard, and that was pretty great, especially since there was a lot of oppressive forces around then, you know. Other poets were indulging in romantic and fantastical stuff, and Akhmatova was like, no. Everything was straight from her gut. Like, she wrote about real pain, and she had no time for the flowers and frills. Like, that just wasn't who she was, you know. I think, like, for me, the biggest thing I would say is, like, she really tries to grab the human condition and show it to you in the rawest form possible, and that can make it very engaging but very hard, you know. I think people really felt what she was feeling, and a lot of people felt exactly what she was feeling, you know. But she didn't really only make waves with the poetry, of course, you know. It really challenged the entire culture. She was taking Russian poetry and making it personal. And at that time, women were very rarely given the stage, right, to speak their minds. And Anna was like, no. She pulled a Kanye. She grabbed that mic and she said, hey, this is what's going on, right? She basically turned that lens inward and really talked about quiet struggles, right? Love and loss and tragedies and all that stuff. She didn't stand on the sidelines as the Russian Empire collapsed and the Soviet Union began to rise. She was right there in the middle of it. She was pen in hand. She was writing her stuff, and her record kind of became a record of psychological and emotional toll that all this crap was taking on the people of Russia, because it wasn't just her. Everybody was feeling this, and I think that that's absolutely essential to have someone be able to have their voice like that, right? She was in the thick of it. It was through her personal relationships. There was censorship, personal tragedies. Her life and her art are not separable. They cannot be separated. They're one and the same, right? So let's talk a little bit more about Anna. She wasn't just a poet, like I said. She was breaking rules, and she wasn't about to let the women in the Tsarist Russia keep her from her calling. Like, it just wasn't right. She wrote with fire and passion, and it just couldn't be extinguished, and that's the truth, right? But just because she was breaking those rules didn't mean she didn't follow the good wife rule. Yes, because she needs romance too, Even women that are feminists and strong and powerful, they need love too. So she wound up married to this guy. Let me see if I can pronounce this right. Hold on. Nikolai. I got that one. Gumilyov. I think it's a soft y sound that I can't do. That he was a poet too. And together they were like the original power couple kind of idea, right? But things didn't go according to plan, unfortunately. She married him, but she wasn't about to let her marriage define her, right? So this was just another chapter to her. She wasn't about the life of as someone's shadow. She didn't want to be a shadow. She wanted to be her own person. So she pushed the boundaries and challenged them. She wasn't that docile woman. No way, no fucking way. Like, that wasn't her. So marriage ended in tragedy. And this is where Nikolai was arrested and executed during Stalin's purges. And if you don't know what that is, like, please go take a look at it. I'm not going to go through it because it's a whole podcast in and of itself. And this is a podcast focused on the women, and I choose not to focus on Stalin. Even though, you know what? I live in the country where he was from. But she didn't collapse and fade away into the shadows, though. She took that heartache, she took that pain and allowed it to transform her. And honestly, after that situation, the poetry that came from her was even more powerful. It was just oh my gosh. And that's kind of what she did. She took every powerful moment, every pain that she had, and she put it through her body, into her pen, and onto paper, She really managed to stay a little bit ahead of the game, I guess, and she did so with grace and power, and that's important. She lived through heartbreak, political oppression, personal tragedy, and every inch of that was fuel for her. And the world took notice. It did. Anna Akhmatova wasn't just a poet sitting in her little corner writing about flowers. She was writing about the heart of Russia. And, her poetry kind of transcended time and place. And I think that's why it's so in, engaging. I think that's like the word that came to mind. I think there's something more powerful, I'm sure. But she basically just carved out a space for herself in the world, and it wasn't a space that was given to her. She had to fight for it. She was an icon. Yeah, definitely. I want to dive a little bit more into her life. We've talked a little bit about her marriage, but I want to go way back in the day, okay? So, let's talk about it, right? She was born in Odessa, which by the way is now Ukraine. And so yes, she is Russian, but Ukrainian, it's once again one of those controversial subjects. I don't want to have the conversation, but look it up. There's some. It's a very interesting thing. Her childhood. She was born into a pretty well off family. Her father was a naval engineer, and her mother was pretty well educated. So she kind of was set up to have the ability to have those privileges, but of course, Russia, so things couldn't stay easy for long, you know. So her family, comfortable life quickly came to she called her parents divorced. And then, just like that, they lost their money, right? The aristocratic lifestyle was gone. The family had to adjust to new reality of lower social standings, you know. But, you know, she wasn't really about the financial ruin. She wasn't going to let it get her down, right? So I'm looking at my notes. You know, she just used it for material. She started to realize early on in life that life doesn't really play by the rules. And I think it's sad that she learned that at such an early life, but I also think it's probably good too in some ways, you know? The world's messy. And especially if you're a woman, and especially if you want to try to make any type of name for yourself. And it was that way then, and in some ways it's still kind of that way now, you know. But she could rebel, and the way she chose to rebel was by picking up that pen, right? Her first big break actually came when she published her first publication poems in 1912. The poems were different. Instead of traditional Russian verses that were all about lofty themes, Anna's writings were more personal, like I said. So they were intimate, they were emotional. She wrote the private struggles of soul. And her poems captured this sense of like almost like melancholy, and, you know, but still was very elegant. And then, as I said, she got married to Nikolai Gumliov. Gumliov was a poet too, and yeah, was he was part of a group of intellectuals who really took pretty extreme stances on Russian culture and politics, which is why he, as I said, was eventually arrested during the Red Terror, thanks, Stalin and Lenin at this time, and he was executed in 1921. Basically, his crime was he was being accused of being involved in an anti-Soviet conspiracy. And so imagine what it was like for her, you know, like after that, there was like chaos for her, right? So she lost her husband, but her life was still not done with drama, you know. She kept writing, and even when the Stalinist purges took aim at her and her work, writing was her thing, so she just pushed through. Her personal life was kind of a roller coaster of heartaches and survival. She had an affair with the poet Boris Pasternak, Dr. Zhivago. Ooh. But things didn't work out there. It was just, personal life. All that stuff was funneled into her work. There's let me get my... She wasn't, nothing that she wrote was comfortable. She wanted to make you feel. And that's why, once again, it's one of the reasons I love her so much. I cannot stress enough for you to go check out her poetry. There was toughness to her, though, right? And so she was a master of finding, like, a universal meaning and making it deeply personal. Yeah. She she was not not somebody to mess with, you know. She didn't just write about misery, though. You know, she steeped in everything was beautiful, was raw and pain and poetic and all that kind of stuff. She was just an amazing woman. You know, I think what I would say is that make sure, like, honestly, I hope that you go and you check out her. I'm sorry, I'm just moving my notes. So yeah, eventually she did pass, of course. So she passed in 1966. So she lived from 1889 to 1966. Pretty darn good, long life, right? She was kicking it for a while. I think I really do challenge you guys to go check out her writing, right? She was sent into exile at one point. She was censored, but everything continued to inspire Russians, and I think it was kind of an interesting thing. She wasn't an ordinary poet. She was a survivor, a warrior, and a voice for those who didn't have a voice, and I think that's pretty impressive. So let's talk a little bit of how she impacted. I think we've kind of talked about that already, right? We've talked about, like, you know, she left a mark, right? Her writing was actually banned at one point by Stalin. So that makes me want to read her even more. You know, and so that just shows you she was onto something there, right? She kept writing secret and she kept going. She's kind of like a punk. She's a punk rock lady, man. Really, she was. She was an icon, and honestly, I don't think she only impacted Russia. I think she impacted other women writers. Anybody who's read her stuff, anybody who's gone through struggles, I do think, like, it's a pretty cool thing to do. So that's it. That's Anna Akhmatova. I think, once again, I'm pronouncing that right. Check her out. She's a wonderful woman poet. She was strong. She was resilient. She was basically just a badass lady who knew what she wanted to do and knew what she needed to say and told her story the best way she knew how. And so, yeah, check her out. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed learning about this wonderful Russian poet. I hope you check out some of her stuff. I hope you get to know her a little bit better. I do try to keep these podcasts between 30 and 40 minutes, so there's much more to her life than what I've covered, but I just gave you some of the big details. If you are interested in reaching out to me, you can do that through the links to my social media and an email for those that like to rock it old school. In the description box, you can also check out the description box if you want to support the podcast. If nothing else, please and thank you. Will you please like, comment, share, follow, do all that kind of good stuff. Share it, shout it from the rooftops, whichever you got to do. I want to get our community built so we can have good discussions about all these badass women's. And also, so maybe I can have people come on and we can have a good conversation. Also, if you want to kick a little cash my way, well, that's always wonderful as well. My cat will thank you because then she will get her weekly dose of catnip. And so, yeah, there's ways to do that through my Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon in the description box. There's also a link to my Medium publication. That is a sister publication to this, where I basically write a more in-depth article on the person. And there's also more information there on other things, like other historical figures and stuff that I haven't covered, or, I don't know if I'll cover them. We'll see. But there's more there. There's also a link to my other podcast, Our Mystic Road Trip. So if you're down for mystical, spiritual, supernatural, magical, woo-woo kind of crap, then check out. That's something I love. It's something I do. It's actually part of my business. And so check it out and see what's going on over there. I think that's it for my shameless plugging. Yeah. And so until next time, guys, stay curious. See ya.